then I became Fanny, then I became Rena Glow in America, and then I became Rena Quin. When I got married, I wrote a book called A Daughter of Many Mothers. I had 6 mothers, and I had 6 names. I was a boy, I was a girl, I was many different things. So let me start from the beginning. I don't believe what I'm saying, because it's just impossible that it happened. But I have proof of everything now. In 1989, how many years ago? 89, 99, 100, 990, 30, 34. I went back to Poland. I found my real birth certificate. I never knew how old I was. I found my parents' marriage license. I found my brother's birth certificates. I found my home. I found the factory that I worked in. I found when I was a boy, pretending to be a boy. I found everything that I'm telling you. So I found my records in the hospital in Sweden. I found everything so that I can tell you now that it really happened. But when you listen to me, you sort of say, maybe this is good journalism. She's making up a lot of stories, right? World War II started September 1st, 1939. I lived with my mother and my father and my 2 brothers in a city in Pietrków in Poland. The first place that the Nazis came into was Pietrków. And as soon as they came in, there were airplanes coming in, and there were soldiers marching in. They had good uniforms and shoes. The Polish army was not ready, just like the Jewish people weren't ready for this massacre. They were in their pajamas when they were taken to Gaza, not in boots and guns on their hands. And everybody was running any place that they could, trying to get away. My story is different because 1.5 million Jewish children were killed for no reason except that they were Jewish children. 1.5 million. I survived. That already makes me different, right? Most children who did survive did so because good Christians helped them to take them into monasteries, to nunneries. They were in hiding. They were in the woods, in the forests. I went through a ghetto, a slave labor camp, various factories, various camps. I was liberated from a place called Bergen-Belsen. When you go to Yad Vashem, the last exhibit there are pictures of Bergen-Belsen with terrible, emaciated and dead bodies lying around. And the smell never, ever leaves you. I don't know if you've been down to Be'eri and those places. I don't know if the smell is still there, but the sight of the massacre is still there. My story is different because if you lose your mother and your father and your brothers, you have no one. That's not true. Every time my mother was killed or somehow or other disappeared, another woman became my mother. And then when she wasn't there, another and another and another. And my book is called A Daughter of Many Mothers. I don't remember my real mother or the others. I remember the last 2, which I'll tell you about. The others, I have no idea with. And then my story is different because it has a happy ending. Most survivors don't have that feeling. You know, they're left with nobody. But after the war, I was adopted by an American family. I learned to speak English like an American because I didn't have to forget any language. I didn't know anything. I was 3.5 when the war started. So I don't speak with an accent because what was my accent? Every time there was somebody else, I don't know what I spoke. And they were very good to me, and they gave me a good education. And I had clothes, I had food, I had a bed. I even had grandparents, not biological, but through them, and aunts and uncles. And my children had grandparents, which is very unusual for Holocaust survivors who are left with nobody, like the hostages. If the mother and father were killed, hopefully they have an aunt or uncle, but if they don't, hopefully some other strangers will take care of them. Okay, September 39, they came in, and it was terrible. Everybody was running all over. And I lived in this house. I found these pictures. I took these pictures, but I found them when I went back in 89. On the door of the house, there is still a mezuzah. I don't know if you know what a mezuzah is, but In every Jewish home, in every hotel, there is this symbol like at the door. You're nodding, you know. And it has a prayer in it. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And it shows you that a Jewish family lived. Even people who are not religious put this up. Can you imagine? I came in 1989, and when the war broke out, things were bad. Things were bad for everybody. War is terrible for no matter who you are. Maybe money, whatever it is. But one night, they came and they took my father and my uncle to a slave labor factory. It was a glass factory. It belonged to Polish people, but it was taken over by the Germans, and they needed slave labor. So they took them. And you were really lucky if you were taken, because there were rumors that the Nazis, the Germans, were killing people, they were shooting people, they were throwing children out of the windows, they were burning things down. Sounds familiar? Mm. And if you were working, and if they need you, maybe they would keep you and not do these things. These were rumors. Nobody wanted to believe them, because Germans were cultured, educated, sophisticated people, right? Unfortunately, we found out that all those rumors were true. One night, in the middle of the night, they was banging down at the door and yelling, "Rouse, rouse, no! You have 10 minutes to pack up whatever you need and run down these stairs." Think of it. You're in your bed. You have to take whatever is the most important thing, and you've got 10 minutes. What would you take?
Cell phone.
What would you take?
My cell phone, definitely.
Your cell phone. You didn't have a cell phone in 19.
So ID.
ID is very important, because there was a woman in the Ukraine who had a passport, but she didn't have one for the baby. And they wouldn't let her out because the baby IDs are very important. What else?
Photographs.
Photographs, okay. Maybe money. Maybe the baby.
Maybe baby, of course.
Maybe you want food. You don't know where you're going to get food from. Maybe warm clothes because you're going to be sleeping out. You have to think very fast. I had to run down those stairs, and people ran down. Other people ran, and there was pandemonium. They were falling on top of each other until we got into this big square. All the houses are built around squares in Poland. We were brought into this big square, 2,000 people. There were 8,000 in the ghetto. You know what a ghetto is? When they came in, they put a barbed wire fence around the Jewish section, and that was known as the ghetto. And you weren't allowed to get out there. No Jews were allowed to leave, and there wasn't enough food. People were starving to death. There wasn't enough heat. Poland is a very cold country. There wasn't enough medicine. People were dying, but they weren't dying fast enough. So the Germans came in, and they took us to this big square. And from this square, we were chased and beaten until we got to the synagogue. You can see the Jewish star, which is still there. And it's a beautiful building, and it wasn't badly damaged, so they were able to fix it. And inside, there are no Jews. Not one Jew is left, all of Pietrzyca. They don't need a synagogue if there are no Jews. They made it into a library. It's a beautiful library, and you can see books on the side. I hired 2 women. I don't speak Polish. I hired 2 women to help me find my home and all the things that I could possibly find. In back of the synagogue, back of the library, is a door. Does everybody see that door? Mm-hmm. Very, very important. I was in this room. Shooting was going on. If you ask the librarian to open the curtain, you can see where the books are, and you can see Hebrew writing. Does everybody see it? Mm. Here's a bigger picture. Anybody know what that is?
Torah, I guess.
Those are the 10 Commandments, written in Hebrew. But in the middle of those 10 Commandments, there are holes. What are the holes?
Bullet holes, I guess.
Yes, those are bullet holes. So here we are in this room, big room than this, wide, and there's shooting going on. And people are dropping dead, and people are yelling, and people are crying, and children are crying. I am 6 years old at this point. I was 3.5 when the war started. My father was taken away. I'm with my mother and my 2 brothers, Yossi and David. What do you think a 6-year-old is doing with her mother?
Crying.
crying and holding on tightly, right? What do you think my mother's doing to me?
Protecting you.
Holding on to me and to my brothers. I don't know how this happened. In back of the library that I showed you, you can see the shooting inside, but there's this door. In back of that door, there was a man. I think he was my uncle, but I have no proof of that. My name was Fredja, because my name kept on changing. Beckoned to me, and he said, "Run, run!" I must have been very stupid, very naive. Why would you run if people are shooting, right? I should be hiding behind my mother, and my mother should be letting me hide, or things like that. I don't know how it happened. I have no idea. I ran out. They easily could have shot me, bopped me over the head, pushed me back. Maybe they didn't see me, or maybe they forgot. How far is this kid going to run? I ran out. That was the last time I saw my mother and my brothers and the rest of those people. They were put onto those cattle cars, trains, made for animals and wood and bundles, and they were taken to a camp called Treblinka, which is one of the 6 extermination camps. Extermination. When they were brought there, they had to get undressed, their hair was cut, and they heard screaming, and when the screaming stopped, they got big men like you, pull out the bodies, and this had been a gas chamber, and they were all gassed. Cyclone B gas was coming down there, and in a short time, they were all dead. 17,000 stones to remember 860,000 people who were gassed, who were murdered there. And then they didn't even have, they had gas chambers, but they didn't have crematorium. So they would put the bodies out, and later Himmler came, and he didn't want any evidence, so they burned all the bodies. And there were ashes all over. And the Polish government put this, and the bigger ones have the name like this, that's me, with the name of my city, Pietrków. And people come and light little memorial candles and say a prayer or whatever it is. Nobody's buried there. They're just all ashes. I never saw my mother. I never saw my brothers. I never saw neighbors, aunts, nobody.
Which year was that?
This is 1942. It started in 1939, September 39. This is January 42. I'm telling you this now, I know. Certainly at that time I didn't know that there was a year or a month or anything else. I was just lucky because people just took me along whatever they happened. This man who told me to run, what was he going to do with a 6-year-old girl? Girls were impossible. They weren't used. Boys over the age of 10 could work. Under the age of 10, they're not needed either. He took me to my father. My father saw me. He kissed me. He was very... What was he going to do with me? For a while, he tried to hide me. And the men helped. People always helped me. And then when he realized that was impossible, he said, from now on, listen, your name is not Fredja, it's Froyam, you're a boy. You're not 6-year-old, you're 10 years old, and you're not a girl, you're a boy. Now say it. I'm a boy, my name is Froyam, and I'm 10 years old. I'm a 10-year-old boy, Froyam, 10-year-old boy, 10-year-old boy, Froyam. Say it over and over and over so you will never forget who you are. Who am I? I'm a boy. My name is Froyam, I'm 10 years old. And all the men knew to call me Froyam. I worked very hard. I don't know how I got away with it, but I did because I'm here. And when you in a glass factory, the ovens are working all the time because they melt the glass, the sand that comes there, and they have big dogs. And every time they wanted to show me who'd be in charge, they would sick a dog on you. And if that dog took a bite of your arm, and if you couldn't lift your arm, they would kill you. There are plenty of people to replace you. You're not necessary. There's so many people. The fear of those dogs never leaves you. We worked very hard. The men helped me. One day, the Allies were getting close. You know who the Allies were? The Americans, the British, and the Russians. They were coming in to fight the German army. And when they were coming in, there were 6 extermination camps: Auschwitz, Majdanek, Sobibor, Chelmno, Belzec, and Treblinka. And they were all, you know where? In Poland. That's where most of the Jews were. That's where all the camps were, all the train tracks lay there. And they decided to send people out of the camps, death marches. You will see them walking in the snow without shoes, without coats, without anything to protect them. And we were brought into these railroad cars. This is called a cattle car, made for animals, not for people. You don't even have steps or ramps. Everybody pushed everybody else. 80 to 100 people were brought into a place like that. We were stuffed into these cars, nothing to eat, nothing to drink, no bathroom. And even if you don't eat and drink, you have to go to the bathroom. So people just saw themselves, and you can just imagine. I think of these hostages being in a room for 12 hours, babies there without changing, without anybody being there. Not allowed to make a sound. Well, here, people did make sounds. People cried. People went crazy. It was impossible to. Finally, we crossed the border from Germany to Poland. The doors were flung open. We jumped down, and Germans dressed impeccably, clean, beautiful uniformed boots, shiny black boots, batons and guns. And they made an announcement: you're being taken to camps. Men on one side, women on the other. My father had a problem. You're shaking your head. What's the problem?
You're a boy.
Yeah, boy.
I'm a boy. And if you go into the camp, what's the first thing you have to do?
Undress.
You have to get undressed to go into the showers. Why do they care about you going into the showers? If they're going to kill you or if you're going to work, why do they care? Well, first of all, they didn't want to be around with people with lice and fleas and feces. And we were filthy. We were disgusting. That's one reason. The other one, I have a ring, and you have a necklace, and you have earrings. You have to leave everything. And if you're naked, there's no place to hide it. We had to get undressed, and my father realized that if I get undressed, they would see I'm not one of the boys. They would kill me, they would kill him, and anybody who tried to help me. He gave me a picture. You see all my pictures around? When you came in, did you see my pictures? If you don't, I've got pictures over there, and these are notes that my husband wrote to me every single day. I'll tell you about him later, but I've got pictures all over. And he said, just look at the picture. Picture of a family. Mother, father, 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. The war is going to be over. The Allies are getting there. I promised to meet you in our home in Pietrków. He promised. Anybody here is a father? Fathers are supposed to keep their promises. He didn't keep his promise. I never saw him again. I told you I found a lot of information. This is a train schedule. The Germans were very, very big about keeping all kinds of notes, all kinds of things, and I have a lot of information. My father's name and my uncle's name is on this. They would take, my name isn't any place. Maybe because I was a boy, I was a girl, I had this name, I don't know. I don't know why. Later on, I found my name. And this is when he entered Buchenwald. Like when you go into a jail or a hospital, you have to sign in. So he had to sign in to say what he had. He had nothing. But I have his name there. And I found this. There's a place that you can find a lot of information if anybody is interested in doing this. I never saw my father. But he saw a teacher that he knew, and he asked her if she would keep an eye on me. I had a new mother. Don't remember her name, but she said, come, and she took my hand, and she said, we'll walk together like mother and daughter. We did. We walked in the snow. I had a frozen toe when I came to America. Nobody understood. How do you get a frozen toe? You're wearing shoes and proper things. we wouldn't. We were naked, like those kids who were taken in from the festival. Many of them were barefoot because they were dancing without shoes. Did they ever get shoes living in those terrible tunnels? As it got cold, did they ever get clothes? Many of them were wearing sleeveless. Were the babies ever changed? I mean, when you think about these, it's just mind-boggling. Anyway, I went with this mother. And just as my father predicted, when we got to Bergen-Belsen, we had to get undressed and leave everything on piles. And whereas the Hamas was very big about showing everybody. They had cameras. And so you could see what happened. We can see the terrible mutilation. We can see how they were... One of the men took a phone and called his father to say, "You'll be so proud of me. I just killed a few of them." And somebody else I saw on television said, "I took a horse home." That horse was a woman. And he's using this woman as a sex object, I guess. I mean, I can't believe it. But I'm coming back to me. I was never alone. When this woman was no longer there, she was there. When we had to go into the showers, and when we came out, she stole a coat that somebody else had left there, and she kept that around us because we just got a rag to wear. And I don't know what happened to the woman. Every 5 or 6, like this group, you get one blanket to cover yourself, and you get one blanket. On the floor with one blanket. How cold, how freezing. I don't know how anybody could have survived it. Every day we were taken into barracks. The women would take their blanket, put a body into it. People were dying all the time. Hundreds of people were dying a day of starvation, of sickness, of beatings, of whatever you can imagine. Bullets. Every place you went, the bodies were thrown out. And when you go to Yad Vashem, you will see a lot of these things. Every place you went, you would see dead bodies, and you would smell it. In Auschwitz, you would smell gas. But here you would smell death. I imagine right after this massacre, if you go into one of the kibbutzim, you would smell death, because there were dead bodies all around. I have a friend who was asked to come and collect. She collected 128 bodies. Some of them they couldn't even recognize. Some of them were decapitated. We're here, all these dead bodies are lying on the floor. Every place you went, you would see bodies. There were 10,000 bodies. I was very sick. I had typhus and diphtheria. Now you're going to say, for a child who doesn't know how to read and doesn't know the language, how do you know what you had? I'll explain it to you. I was taken out and thrown with other bodies there. Some of them are alive. Again, I'm thinking of these people who were thrown from the festival onto the trucks. I don't know if you saw the pictures, but they were just thrown like bundles. So I was thrown out into this pile of people. And I was just lying there, not being able. When you have typhus and your mind is going around and you've got a high fever and you don't know what's going on. I didn't know probably what was going on altogether. Anyway, something happened that day. It was really a surprise. It never happened before. Soldiers came in wearing different uniforms, speaking a different language, and they had bullhorns, and they made an announcement. "We are the British Army. We have come to free you. You're free. You're free. You can go home. You can go home." What's home? I don't have a mother. I don't have a father. I don't speak this language these British people are speaking, and I can't move. The British had a very hard time. They tried to feed people. If you give somebody a piece of cake like this or even bread that people are eating, if you haven't eaten, you have to be very careful, and people died. 14,000 people died right after the war because and the British learned that they have to be careful how they were eating. Then they buried. The British made these huge pits, and they got other inmates or even the Germans to come to help build. And in every religion, you're supposed to have a little bit of decorum, a little bit of decency, right, when you bury somebody. Mm-hmm. But you can't do this with 10,000. So with bulldozers, with trucks, they pushed them into these big pits. And then they burnt down all the houses, the barracks. They were so filled with lice, with fleas, with rats, with feces. People just got themselves dirty and dead bodies. They burned everything down. They made these big signs saying typhus. Even if you're driving as a British person, you have to be careful because even the dust picks it up. It's so bad. And then they took people like me. Because I was lucky, Sweden had welcomed 6,000 survivors, children and old people, and I was one of them. And they put me on a stretcher, and they carried me to a train, and there was a Fort Bernadette, and they made buses like into ambulances, and they brought me into Sweden. I don't know what happened to the woman who was my mother. I got another woman. Then she went away, and I got to Sweden, and I met somebody else. I was very sick. Now, I told you I can prove it. This is my temperature chart. Can you imagine? 1945. In Sweden, I had typhus and diphtheria, and all this. Not that I remember this, but it's. I have been, and while I was in the hospital, recovering from these two sicknesses, and I probably had something else also, a wonderful Christian couple came to visit me. They were beautiful, and they brought me a doll. Didn't know what a doll was. And they brought me candy, and they brought me clothes, and they asked me if I wanted to go and live with them and be their daughter. Well, of course I wanted to be there. I always wanted to be somebody's daughter, and I was used to, everybody gets a new mother all the time, right? The people around me said that I should not go there because the children were going to take to a place called Palestine, and in Palestine I would meet my mother and my father and my brothers and the rest of the family. Why did I say this place Palestine? What is Palestine? Think about it. This is 1945. April 15, 1945. There was no Israel. When was Israel born? 1948. This was 3 years earlier. There was no Israel. We had no friends. Nobody wanted to take the Jews. Nobody helped us in any way. There was no food. I mean, thank God we have these humanitarian, I'm sorry?
Bodies.
Well, we have the airplanes bringing down food or taking, nobody helped. Nothing was happening. Anyway, they said that I should go to Palestine. That's what this place was called. Not until 1948. And that there I would meet my mother and my father and my brothers. I didn't know they were all dead at this time. I didn't know what dead meant. I just knew that you get a new person. Anyway, I didn't go from the hospital with this Christian family, although I have a little gift that they gave me, a little model wooden sculpture. And I went to a home with children. And that's me over there. That's my first picture. And while I was there in Sweden, I was going to be taken to Palestine with the orphans. And there were kibbutzim people, and children were going to be taken there. I met a woman, Anna. She had 2 children, Fanny, who was 9.5 years old, born in Germany, and Sigmund, who was older, and her brother had gone to the United States, and somebody had to welcome you. Somebody had to sponsor you. You know the problem of migrants that they have in America now, that people are coming in illegally? I don't know if you have that in South Africa. So nobody was allowed to come in unless somebody sponsored you, that you wouldn't be a ward of the state, and that they would take care of it. Anna had a brother, David Pine was his name, and he's money. She had tickets to go to America. I had the luck. And she asked me, would I like to be her daughter and go with her to America? And everybody said how lucky I was that somebody wants to take me. America is a wonderful place, and there's food there, and nobody was being shot, and there's a bed to sleep in, and you have to go to America. And from there, you can always go to Palestine. I didn't go with this Christian couple. I went with Anna. Anna gave me a new name. I'm used to having a new name. I was a boy, I was a girl. Now my name is Fanny. Remember I was told to Poland? No, I was born in Germany. Her birthday was February 15th, 1936. I have a birthday now. She didn't need her. She was dead, and I didn't have one. Her mother, everything about that child became me. And we went on a ship, and there was food, and there was music, and children were running around, and everything was wonderful. And we came to America, and we were taken to Ellis Island, which is place where you have to, sign in, and they check you in. I was very legal. My name is Fanny. I'm the daughter of Anna Philip Straw. I was born in Germany. I have a birthday. I have a passport. Everything is great. And her family met us and took us to an apartment. And the children were wonderful. Every day the children would say cup, say phone, say mic, say room. Every day I learned new words, and it was wonderful, because if I knew that this was a glass, you knew it was a glass, and everybody knew the same word. I mean, I didn't know how you learn a language. It's a strange thing. Everybody knew this is a glass, and this is a picture, and this is a book. I was learning to speak, and the children were. A man gave me a carriage. I never had a doll in a carriage before.
How old were you now?
I'm almost 9. I started 3.5, I told you, and then I was 6 when I lost my mother, and now I'm 9.5. My father was taken away before. I don't know exactly how it was about that. Actually, I know, because I'm Fanny, and I have a birthday.
Right.
So I do know. I forget that I know, but I do know. Right? Invited to come to Sweden. This is to Fredriksson, born in 36 in Poland, entered Sweden in 45 in a transfer sponsored by the Swedish Red Cross from German concentration camps. And then I was taken to this camp, and then I was taken to this hospital. I didn't show it to you, I just told you about it. But this is proof. Not that I remember this, but that I have it. And then I went to the United States, and I met this couple. We never talked about the Holocaust. I married a wonderful man. I had a wonderful life. I had music lessons. I went traveling. I did all the things very lucky little girls do. And in 1981, by that time I had 4 grown children, and there was a conference in Israel for Holocaust survivors looking for each other. In the camps, at the displaced persons camp, they tried to reunite families. Nobody found any of my family. We came here. There's a big building, Binyanei Huma, put up signs to see if anybody knew me or if I knew them. Nobody ever heard of me, with all my names, because I don't know which name they would remember. Nobody ever heard of me. So we wrote to this place called the International Tracing Bureau. They have 54 miles of everything that the Germans did, the perpetrators, the survivors, how much food you got, how much. Yesterday paper I saw that somebody's suing the Dutch airlines, not airlines, Dutch trains. Did you read about that? Because they transported, they called them pieces. Each human being was a piece, and you had to pay for a piece to be transferred to one of these camps where you'd be killed. So all this, I found my name, my real name, my parents' name, my brother's name, where I lived, the factory I worked in, the camps, everything that I told you, I have proof of now. So it's not that I remembered it really. I thought I remembered it, but now I have absolute proof. In 89, I went back and I found everything. Not everything, but I found my house. I found my real birthday. Now I have 2 birthdays. One in December 35, and one in February 36. It's only 2 months different, but it was a different year. And they used to write it in big books. They didn't have computers in 1936. They wrote it by hand.